All right, so we're here today with our friend Mark, and we're in Amsterdam. And Mark is American, but you've lived in Holland for how long now?
This is my 14th year.
14th
Whoa.
year. But your family is also from Portugal, so you definitely have a lot of
European influences.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about Airbnb, and what's interesting for us is that there are two parts of Airbnb that we want to talk to you about. Number one is your family owns like a house in Portugal that you're trying to, or it's kind of a business for you. But let's talk about some of the issues we were talking about earlier with that.
So the house in Portugal, actually I guess a lot of people listening might be able to relate to this. So my family is, they immigrated to the United States in the 70s, and first the grandparents went, which was a very common story in the 70s. So when they arrived in New Jersey, they were surrounded by Portuguese people doing the same thing. And the next stage in that was more or less within 10, 20 years, a lot of those first arrivals retired. And they were mostly factory workers and house cleaners.
In America.
Yes, yeah. And this was the Portuguese, and before them there had been the Polish. But this is a specific story for the Portuguese, where when they retired, they actually went back to Portugal, right? That's slightly different. Plenty of the Italians that I grew up with in New Jersey, there was no going back anywhere. New Jersey was home. My grandparents, like a lot of grandparents, had kept property that their relatives were taking care of. They always had this feeling like, I got to go back. That's where I feel most comfortable. It's a simple life. Now that I have this US dollar savings, I'm going to live great in Europe, or at least in Portugal.
Right.
Which was true up until 1999 or 2002. So my grandparents went back to Portugal and destroyed whatever was there, the old house that they had grown up with, and they built something new and the way they'd always wished, and of course with space for the grandkids, because that was going to be the highlight of the year. In the summer, the grandkids are going to come. They should have their own room. So they built this big house and lived in that house for the better part of the next 2.5 decades. Eventually, they went into a old folks' home. But after 1 year, my grandfather died, and my grandmother is still there, and actually she's doing better than I've seen her in years. So the matter at hand for us here is the house. My parents go to that house 2 times a year. I myself go about twice a year.
And we see a lot of people like in forums talking about, well, I have this extra house, or I have a house and I have an extra room, but I'm not renting it. Like, I'm really upset. Like, why isn't this working? And I guess it's like you, this place, it's in Portugal. It sounds cool, but it's not really in a place that anyone wants to go to. So is that the problem? I mean, how often is it getting rented? And,
Right. So the real concern for my family is not business. The real concern for my family is that this house that they love very much and is still in good condition get used. Even offering it for free to relatives, nobody's interested. And as you say,
because why? Because it's just in a part of the country no one wants to go.
It's in a small village. Small villages are in decline. Less and less people every year. Everybody's very old. Well, you've experienced this in the countryside. Okay, you can get electricity, you can get water, but internet, for example, is quite slow. You got to use maybe they got 4G. I don't think so, but they don't have as much access to a lot of the things. The highway is still 15 to 20 minutes away, and that's almost far enough that people are discouraged. Now, on the map, it's 20 minutes from the beach, a beach that now they do surfing championships there. On the map, it's 15 minutes from a mountain, a beautiful mountain that you can stand on top and breathe nice air. And it's right in between these things. But in practice, it's in the middle of agricultural land. That agricultural land is really beautiful, but it's not familiar to anyone. It's not any place that you're going to do a lot of tourism, although you can walk forever and eat fruit off the vine, as they say. So we want that house to get used. And so my mom, of course, knows that I travel a lot, and she's heard my stories, first as a couch surfer and then later as a Airbnb user. And she said, all right, well, fine, let's put on an Airbnb. Because it's in a good place technically, and let's advertise it as, look, this is our grandparents' house. We grew up in this place. It has a lot of sentimental value. It's also in this beautiful agricultural area. You've got to have a car, and we emphasize that because people, especially from Europe, I still get the requests. Well, isn't there a bus? I saw that there's a bus. I'm like, yeah, there's a bus. It comes around.
Sometimes
they've even got a schedule printed, and it will take you to a city that you don't need to go to.
Yeah.
So I still have problems where it's very clear in the description, you need a car, you need a car. I don't like cars. I'm just telling you, you need to have a car, rent it, whatever. And still people submit requests going, do I need a car? So we put it up on Airbnb. We have a cousin who's not very schooled in the ways of the internet at all, agricultural family. She's in her 50s, maybe 60s. She has daughters who are in their 20s, also not very good. Well, they're not very good with English. They're okay with the internet. And this family, our dear cousins, they help us by already watching over the house, watering the plants. And so we just explained to them, listen, we're going to send people occasionally. We didn't make any secret about it. They're renting it. We'll pay you also for your work. Just let them in, show them around, use sign language, and which they have. And they're going to stay in our house because it needs to get used. And yes, we'll make a little money, and so will you, because all of my cousins have that same problem. Agriculture doesn't pay very well, and when it's not harvest season, they're not that busy. We've done that now this is probably the third summer. I got to say, the first 2 summers I was more motivated. This summer I didn't care at all. And part of that was the amount of requests that we got were very few. And it's funny because if you look up that location, you'll find lots of houses that look somewhat similar to my grandparents'. Not as descriptive as a story, that's my writing, but and they also have very few reviews, and they don't seem very used.
So there are a lot of places on Airbnb in that area.
Word is out.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
So everyone. So I guess that's the point I'm trying to bring out here is that it's interesting. Just because you have an available home or an extra room at your house does not guarantee success. Just because the question is, does anyone want to come to that area? So
I've tried to promote it as that place where you can write your novel,
right?
Because nothing's going on.
Because it is that place.
Yeah, it is.
Besides the occasional tractor making a lot of noise, or dogs barking. That's a big one. Mostly, what I get, because there is a lot of space and it's safe, and the beach is nearby, and what I get is families. My first year or so, it was mostly French families. So it would be like mom, dad, child. Child might be already a teenager.
How many people have stayed there, you think?
At the most? Oh, you mean,
total.
How many bookings have you had?
I think I've had 5 bookings in the whole, in 3 years.
Wow.
And this summer I had 0, so.
Oh, no.
And plus, I've seen it. It's relatively cheap, right? It's like $50 a night.
It's less than that. Yeah, it's 35 euros a night.
Can you believe that?
And that's a competitive price.
Right.
That's a competitive price because it is a villa. Yeah.
So you can rent a whole
need
place
to go there.
for $35.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And the thing is about these places, and maybe you experience this with where you live. That water bill when people are there. It's high.
Yeah.
I guess, getting the water out there,
so it doesn't come from a well? I mean, it comes from city water.
Yeah, it probably should come from a well, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Electricity, that is a steep bill. In fact, it becomes hard because you keep the rate low because you want people to come.
Right.
And I guess you're competing with other properties that look basically the same.
Yeah.
So I thought, keep the price low, because maybe people would come, and then later, if the reviews are good enough and some buzz starts, I can increase the price. But that never really happened. So you keep the price low, and in the end, you barely break even with what it actually costs. So my mother, who's not into the business, she really just wants the house to get use. She said, after the 2 first summers, she said, actually, it's not really worth it. I mean, you can keep it up there, and if we get a nice offer from nice people, let's do it. But generally, there's no benefit.
Yeah, it seems like there would have to be an equation done where you're thinking, I want to get it rented, so I have to be competitive on price. But if my costs outweigh, what I make, what's the point? It's
just too much trouble.
It's a hassle of your internet time, but plus your cousins having to
Yes.
talk to people.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting story because, again, Airbnb isn't just about renting anything. You have to have a place where people want to come to.
This is something for Europe maybe. As Airbnb becomes popular in different corners of the continent, so sometime in this spring, I think, there was a month or so where I kept getting requests from Russia. And my partner is Russian, so I would say, "What's going on here? That's like number 4 from Russia."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Yeah, I noticed it in Russian media and my friends' conversations. Like, it seems like this is the summer where Airbnb has been discovered in Russia.
Oh.
So people are just really
Maybe they ran
active."
some ads over in Russia.
So
or
I mean,
something.
so
It hit.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about kind of like Airbnb in Amsterdam. But before we do that, though, so do you think Airbnb is no longer seen as an American company, that it's, or a service is just wherever global?
No, it's definitely not an American company in the eyes of a traveler over here. It's actually seen as number 2 or 3 to I'm holding my hands up with the radio.
Yeah.
Hotel up here, depending on your age, hostel number 2,
Right.
Airbnb number 3, and maybe actually Airbnb above hostel.
Right.
And
As a choice.
And are there services though that are specifically for the continent over here, like competing
Other
services
kinds of-
that people use, or
Yeah, so I see a lot of people. I was in the Azores, which are these islands in the middle of the Atlantic, earlier this summer, and the place that I found that a lot of people were using, one of the competitors, I think, Home Away,
Home Away, yeah.
and there's a couple others
Yeah.
that look very similar, but don't take as much percentage-wise, and also don't provide as much service-wise.
Right.
So it's much more just about
Right.
connecting you with someone.
Exactly.
we also have a
We're on
place
Home
on
Away.
Home Away
Yeah.
too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see a
So-
difference in the types of people?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Home
Wow.
Away is actually one of the older sites. It's one of the first sites. So it's more family oriented, people wanting more longer vacations,
Like most of our week longs came from Home Away.
Okay.
And then shorter ones come from
I just didn't know if maybe there were services that like just focused on countries here, but maybe not.
I can't
interesting.
think of anything offhand, services specifically for... No, I
Okay.
got nothing on that front.
Okay, so we're in Amsterdam, and we wanted to talk to you about your experience, and this is the angle we're going to take. You work briefly for one of these like companies, a guy who manages multiple properties.
Like you look at his profile and he has like
Yeah.
7, 8. You're like, how does he own all these?
And there's like podcasts about these guys
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
like run these
Yeah,
companies.
yeah.
And basically it's like someone has an extra apartment. They don't want to have to rent it out. So they give the apartment to a guy like this.
Yes.
And he manages it for it's percent.
Yes.
And your job was to kind of help him out. You were cleaning, checking in.
In the beginning, I was a
Right.
translator for the cleaners who were Brazilian.
Because you know Portuguese.
And so I would come and give instructions to the cleaners,
Right.
and I got to greet some Brazilian guests occasionally because I was useful that way.
Yeah.
And then later it became a cleaning thing,
And
generally
checking in.
doing check-ins
Yeah.
and check-outs.
So I guess my question is, you're a limited experience with that company. What did you think of that process of like some guy running? I think he has a 40 of them.
Yeah, I think 40 is
Okay.
pretty close to what he's
I
got
mean,
now.
was it? Because it seems like we're doing just one.
Yeah.
and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I've been there.
But obviously he probably gives work out to a lot of people. But what did you think of that kind of a service? Like, is it more just like party tourists who don't care about quality? They're just like, give me somewhere cheap. Or is it?
No,
Yeah, tell me.
it's become the opposite. In other words, it's become a sort of, not luxury, but somewhere there, quite of a quality place to stay. In the early years, I think that it was much more, there were less places that he was managing, and then he had all the bad experiences. I mean, there's something we should talk about, and I think it's pretty easy to follow. We're in Amsterdam, and that's probably the 3rd time we say it in this show.
Yeah.
This place is a non-stop tourism rotating door. Or so,
Yeah.
A revolving door. There we go.
Yeah.
It's incredible. There's no such thing as an off-season. There's no limit to what kind of place you can stay in. I mean, it's every kind of place. There's even a student dorm that for part of the year becomes a hotel because there's that much demand and students are gone anyway and people don't mind staying in what was a very crappy dorm. They're renovated.
And plus we live in a city too where there is not enough cheap apartments for just people to live here. So there's definitely a stress, tension between renting on Airbnb and homes. I mean, and we've seen that in cities around the world.
Yeah, there's a huge battle going on here. I don't know that it's bigger than whatever happens in New York, but it should be just as big because people here, I see it, and I'm not busy with this fight, but I'm concerned. Like, I live in a neighborhood that is very attractive to both live in and to visit. And I have more interaction, or I see more Airbnb guests than I do my actual neighbors. I can look out to my left here, and we're looking at 2 windows in a backyard, and there's like 3 or 4 backyards that are connected. I have never seen, in the 2 months I've lived here, I've never seen one of the actual residents outside. I've only seen Airbnb guests on the ground floor, on the first floor. Now, it's not all Airbnb, but it's almost all Airbnb.
Right.
And a lot of neighbors at the same time are very angry about this, or at least worried. They don't feel right. I know a lady who complains that Airbnb guests, never mind Airbnb, rental guests sit on a bench outside of these apartments and they just drink and joke and scream all night and they don't care. They don't know where they live. And she says, she's had it. And she'll complain to the city council, and the city council will send an investigative team to check if something's really going on. I mean, there is a major conflict in this town. And part of that conflict is also because serious money is on the table.
Yes. Because
people make a lot of money.
Because it's like what's happening in like San Francisco and in New York. People are taking apartment buildings off the market and basically turning into like little small hotels, right?
Yeah, yes.
Right.
Didn't you? It's mentioned right down the street.
There's a building that's only Airbnb. There's more than one, and they've been designated. They're official. They pay whatever extra taxes that's required, I guess, for A, B, and B in general.
Right.
And that means that all year round, that's going to be a rental. So all year round, every few days, I meet somebody new. I don't really meet them. I smile, I say hello, I can kind of tell. And mostly, no one is mean or destructive when I see them. Matter of fact, I get to see a lot of people with kids that seem to be visiting. And in that sense, it's not so bad. But sometimes it really is an odd feeling. Like, I want to talk to a neighbor about something that's going on, and I've got... Bye, bag behind you, off I go.
But, I guess, like, if you're a landlord, though, I can see the why it would be cool, because if you have people stay short-term, they don't have long-term leases that you have to deal with, and you're probably making more because you're getting paid more per night.
Oh, you're getting paid more per night. That's definitely...
That's a big thing.
Although you have to deal with a lot of damages, a lot of... So let's come back to this being Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Now, one of the most common visits to Amsterdam is the weekend trip. I think the top one is still the people coming over from the UK.
Yeah.
Because you got to imagine it, people that aren't from the UK, you come over on a night.
On a booze cruise.
Yeah, you can take the boat.
On the boat, or it's a quick flight.
Yeah, it's a 1-hour EasyJet flight. That flight can cost you €20 if you book it early enough.
Yeah.
So you can come over to Amsterdam, and your objective is to get completely smashed and survive barely, right? And it's fun, it's exciting. It's a lot of times it's bachelor parties and
drug tourism, basically.
It is it's a mix of drug and alcohol tourism, and I got to see that a lot when I was handling check-ins and check-outs for Airbnb, an Airbnb place here. It was a mixed bag, but when it was bad, it was horrid. You'd get a request. 4 guys, I'm talking about a studio apartment with an air mattress in the living room, right? In the living room, with an air mattress away from where the bed is.
Right.
And so you could fit 4, you could. And you'd get a request. We are 4 guys driving up from Paris. We'll arrive tomorrow. Is that okay? And if you say yes, you would get 4 20-year-olds, maybe they're 20, friends, who in the beginning would act a little standoffish, a little quiet, but try to be, calm. One of them was usually social, right? And he could look you in the eye. He was one of the few. And, you'd say goodbye on a Friday, and Saturday night you'd get a call, maybe Friday already, but usually Saturday night you get a call from a neighbor saying they're banging on the walls, they're on the roof, There was roof access. But they're on the roof screaming, and you come over, and as soon as you knock on the door, loud noises become hushed. And then the one sociable guy would come, his eyes were all bloodshot, and he'd be like, What's going on? Like, when the neighbors are complaining, then, you guys have to... And, like, what are you going to do? You're me, right? I don't own the place.
Yeah.
And even if I did, well, it's complicated at that point. And so over the, not years, but over the months, you get mean, essentially. And I would say, I don't want to hear anything from neighbors.
Yeah.
Please don't ring the wrong doorbell when you come home. That was a very common thing.
At 3 a.m.
The ringing of the wrong doorbell. But then weirder things, okay, it's one thing to leave dirty dishes in the sink, unfortunately. Every single dish in the house. That's an amazing thing. I guess when you're stoned, you just keep reaching for more dishes and dirtying them. And then the putting back of the dirty dishes into the cupboard where they came from. This was amazing, Or the ability of people to take a wet, dirty towel and just fit it right under the couch or under a plant. Like, I don't see how these wet, dirty towels travel to every corner. It's just...
I mean, when we were talking about this earlier, it is interesting how, like, our Airbnb, our rental, we live in, a rural area in America.
The countryside.
We're really, we don't have enough data yet since we've only been doing this for about 6 months or so. But so far, everyone we've gotten has either been a family or just like a young couple, and they're just there to go hiking. And so I really think the place determines the kind of renter you're going to get.
The place, yeah.
I'm sure the one good thing about having a place in a place like Amsterdam or in New York, or maybe it's New Orleans, is that it's probably you're fully booked.
Yeah, sure. All the time you've got
you
business.
can just deny people because you're going to fill it up.
Yeah. Something you guys said in your second episode, which I listened to today, you said that because you own it, and when you welcome people, you tell them, we saved, we built, you really set the tone. This was very hard for me as not the owner.
Right.
I don't know if it would have helped.
Right.
Because I felt very responsible for this place.
Because you were responsible.
Yeah,
for
I had the keys.
Yeah.
It was like my place.
Yeah.
But still, I don't know that I set the tone the way you guys can.
Right.
But then again, if people aren't ready to receive it, well, I don't know if it matters.
They don't care.
So I'm sure people might be asking a couple of things from you. Number one is, could you do a better job filtering people out?
Yeah.
Checking more who they are, how old they are.
Like no bachelor parties.
And number two,
or whatever.
Do you hammer them on the security deposit? Like, if there's, wet towels, okay, that's $200.
So could I? Yes. Should I? Absolutely. And let's go back to the gentleman we were talking about who manages about 40 properties, and I helped out. I've watched him evolve, his business evolve over the years. It was 2 places in the beginning, and all these years later, it's something around 40. First of all, there's now a surcharge for all kinds of things. You're going to arrive after 10 o'clock at night, then it's going to cost 20 euros extra, whatever it is.
Yeah, late check-in,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, late check-ins cost more. You want to leave dirty dishes in the sink? That has a price tag, which is
smart
real.
of him, though.
Yeah, which is, listen, if you don't feel like doing the dishes, it's going to cost you 10 euros extra. Maybe it's worth it to you. Right? And he says some people do go for it.
Take it.
So he has a list of surcharges for the actual renters that, in a way, penalize you, at least financially, for behavior that is unbecoming of a guest, let's say.
Right.
And that has sort of been an evolution. But you're right, the pickiness of choosing is also a big deal. So in that place that I was talking about, and I know I'm jumping around, that I managed just the one little studio where the random people would show up, the person who was handling communication was not me, it was the owner.
That's the problem.
That's tough.
And it's a she in this case, she seemed like she was accepting most anyone.
She was just trying to get stuff filled and letting you. And see, I think that's the interesting thing. People where it's not the same person doing the bookings, doing the check-ins, doing the cleaning. I feel like if it's not a single person, then you're definitely going to get problems.
By cleaning, you learn so much.
Yes.
Who will and who is allowed and who's not allowed,
And in many ways, you're out of touch. Right. If it's your place, but you never clean it, or you're not there at least, then you do not understand.
Right.
Maybe you don't need to. That's a luxurious position. So it's an interesting evolution in a way, because even that person I'm talking about, she started to see this and started turning down the 4 friends driving over from Berlin, although 4 friends from Berlin is usually not a big problem.
Well, I mean, it's so interesting. I know in America, I've just seen very openly, people are like, you have to be over 25.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
interesting.
Yes,
that's very interesting.
Yes.
It's just age.
They're
It's
just like, no 18-year-olds
we don't.
who are about to go to college.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Or bachelorette parties.
We had a bachelorette party, and it was okay. but people will be like, hey, host, we're going to have this bachelorette party. We're super clean. And people are like, nope, don't care.
Yeah.
But they're allowed to do that.
And I think it's
you know?
important to stay mean like that. As unacceptable as it would be to run a society this way, we're not running a society.
Well,
It's a business.
I mean, too, I think the benefit of, again, having a rental in a place like Amsterdam is you can afford to say no
To the party group.
to like 9 people, knowing there's always a 10th person who's going to be a nice family. I mean, there's that much demand, right?
Yeah,
Right.
And it's basically what you're saying. I think you also can't afford not to do this because the damage will knock you down and you'll be out of this game very soon. In other words, he often, again, our man with 40 places, he says, unfortunately, depending on age, on where you're coming from, I can tell you already, based on experience, if you're likely to get a little crazy that night. If you break something, are you likely to pay for it, or are you the other category where you deny you broke it,
hide it under the couch?
And for him, the way he makes his rules, it works, and he's crafted this over good and bad experiences. What I often got to enjoy when things were good would be like, usually, and there's no surprise here, it would be like a couple with even a very young child, like 5, 6 years old. It doesn't matter, though. Could be baby. Oftentimes, when these people would come, they're still coming to the same Amsterdam, but they saw it different. They approached it different.
It's different. They're not there for drug tourism. Probably not.
I guess not. I had a Canadian guy with his 2 teenage daughters come over. He was so nice. And actually, I don't even know if they weren't into drug tourism, because sometimes teenagers go with their parents when you're in Amsterdam. Especially if it's a single parent, you might. But this man was so self-conscious about, how he left the place. He started cleaning the place when we arrived. He wanted to vacuum. He wanted to know where the vacuum was.
I think
that's a good sign.
So speaking of culture, so how was your experience around Americans who came to rent? Was it all over the place? And I'd imagine
didn't get that many Americans. Often I would get one American in a group of 4 people coming over from Germany. Right. And that one American was often the one who might do the negotiating with me.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had mixed experiences. Americans is also depends on age.
Yeah.
Yes.
But by and large, if you've come this far, you're not really going to be destructive. And it's usually you're part of a longer trip, so you might be quite tired. So you're not going to be busy destroying the place.
Or heavy partying because you're on a long trip.
Yeah. It's not a weekend trip.
So it's not necessarily, this is one case where it's not really an American thing to completely ruin a place. There are other effects, right? I mean, and now I come back as a neighbor living in a place that's all Airbnb. I do run into a lot of Americans on the street, and they've got their map, they've got their suitcases with the wheels behind them, and I don't exist,
Yeah.
and in many cases they don't exist either, and this is every day. This is where it gets weird as a person who's a resident.
Right.
Well, that's just when I can see the complaint about Airbnb in the communities where it kind of takes out the fact that it is a neighborhood and people do know each other, and you start to water all that down.
Yeah, especially when it's all year round.
Right.
I didn't think Amsterdam was that crazy a city for installing a rule that property owners could, for a specific amount, 20 days. I don't know if that's the right number, if it should be, but I get the idea that, okay, it's your house.
Right. So in Amsterdam, if you own your home, you're allowed to rent out the home for 20 nights. I think it's 20 nights every a year.
Every year.
Just because it's your home and you should be able to do what you want. But after a certain amount, they feel like it starts to become not really your home.
It's a
It's a
business.
business.
Yeah.
So you have to register as a business, so there has to be a fire extinguisher and all the... You have to be up to code.
Right.
And
Right.
you have to get checked for that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't blame them for doing something like that, even if they might not have it quite right in terms of fairness.
Well, plus they want the taxes.
Well, that's
Want
true.
the money,
Which is
yeah.
which
You're
is-
running a hotel, we want to
Yeah,
tax
which
that.
again, I can understand
They
because
should.
if you own a hotel, the hotel's like, they're doing just what we do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
don't they have to charge a 15%, occupancy tax because tourists are coming in and it's using public services
And that's how it is in our area
Right.
too. It's
Right.
exactly the same.
Right.
And we fight for that too. We're like, if you're actually going to run it, you have to have a business license because you have to pay a tax
Right.
so that the county can actually thrive.
I missed this. You have to have a business license then?
Yep.
Yeah.
But
Where we are,
our
yeah.
county makes it very easy because it's a touristy kind of area. So for them, they're happy. They're like,
Yes, please, here
here's
it
a
is.
business license
Yeah.
because we're going to get more
Okay. Yeah.
revenue. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, when it gets healthy, when it's healthy back and forth between business and
They're not
government.
fighting people.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
But I this is the first time where I really feel like something has got to change or else we have a problem. I think that it's too much, it's
Yeah.
just too much. And rents are increasing at a rapid pace, and I don't know if this does anything to slow that process down.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I think that's a bigger conversation
Yes.
about Amsterdam, where, Amsterdam's more like a village almost. It feels
Yes.
like a village,
Yeah.
but it's becoming a large urban area, and that's too much. It's pressure. Like
Yeah.
what happens in urban areas is people go up, and
Right.
there needs to be large buildings, and
Right.
I don't know if that
That
could
doesn't
work
happen here.
No.
Like, either
Mhm.
I don't know if the ground could handle
No,
the sand
No, it
cannot
absolutely
seriously
cannot
not.
handle that.
So I don't know. It's
Right. Yeah, in a way, like, isn't this adding another layer to what was already gentrification, right? That's one
Right.
thing. But now we have something else, which, I don't know if it fuels gentrification or what. It just,
Well, it's interesting when you said that the rents are rising, and this is happening in San Francisco too,
Right.
where it's almost like, is that the Airbnb effect, where it's like so many people want to come here, so that the landlords are like, I'm either raising the rent by X amount, or you get out so I can make it a hotel
Right.
because
Yes.
I want to make more money
Yes.
in this
Yeah.
desirable area.
Yeah. Like,
So
you
so
need to make
it's
money.
almost like, did Airbnb make that happen? You
Chicken
know?
or an egg,
Yeah, it's like,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
it's also interesting too. I mean, the reason why we enjoy staying in Airbnb apartments is because they're in a neighborhood,
Right.
And we want to go and we want to have
Be in a neighborhood.
I hate to say it, have an authentic experience.
Yes.
But then, as more and more of these happen, then you start ending up like
in an
everyone's
Airbnb
doing it,
neighborhood.
and now it's just like we're all a bunch of tourists looking at each other.
Yes, looking at each other.
What's
That's
going
right.
on?
And then what made it a cool experience now is just not a cool experience.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how it might evolve.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those idealists who in the early days of Airbnb thought and felt this is a nice experience. And I still do it. I was just in Russia. I stayed in an Airbnb.
And plus, if you were big into couch
Couchsurfing,
too,
Yeah.
couchsurfing.com.
Yeah.
.org,
There's still, and Couchsurfing went commercial for a while or tried and lost a lot of its soul.
Because Couchsurfing was like, it was a connector network.
It
It
was
wasn't
just-
like
yeah, it
you
was
pay
pretty
people to sleep
informal.
on
It was
their
pretty
couch.
simple. Yeah, no ad revenue
Yeah.
on the website.
Craigslist almost, right? Yeah.
Comparable, yeah. It was really ad hoc.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it got popular enough that there were some venture capital people who put money into
Oh
it.
God, that's when it goes down.
Revamped the website, which no longer was like that you find someone, but someone finds you. It was all very odd.
Yeah.
And now they say they're trying to make a comeback. But anyway, what I find is that, and that's why I like listening to the program, and I'm going to be listening, because of what you guys are experiencing is much more what I think counts as, and again, this is my taste in some ways, but as a unique or authentic, an experience with heart. And
Yeah.
what we've done, and you can say it's inevitable, but what we've done with the managing of properties, we've removed a lot of that heart.
Right.
And now here, I have a lot of friends who clean Airbnb apartments. Many of them quite capable of doing other things, but just that's the job they've got, right? And what they talk about a lot is, handling the cleanups, handling the check-ins, how impersonal it all is.
I mean, it's basically like a hotel. I mean, we've stayed in places where, like, there's a guy down in Bogota. Or
he runs like 70 of them.
Yeah.
He basically had a company, and so we went in, and it was very neat and clean and nice, and very well
Brand
done,
new
but it just
building.
felt soulless. Like there isn't really anything there that feels like a home. It's like we were just in a hotel room. You know, some guy checked us in. He was just some guy that getting paid by the hour, and you know, and it was fine. It's just. It is a different experience, you know.
Yeah. I have friends who do a lot of business traveling, and when I say this, they say, I don't need the authentic experience.
Yeah.
Right.
I just like
a big
a
place.
simple, clean, sometimes better quality than a hotel
Right.
And
place.
bigger, right? Like, you know, a bit bigger. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
being in a
it's
big
more
suite or
spacious.
something.
Yeah.
And plus, they give me the receipt so I can put it as a work expense, and they do all the proper filing now,
Right, exactly.
which is true.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's very nice.
So the other question I have is cleaning. So we talk about, we clean our own place.
You've heard us talking about
I have.
cleaning.
And the tools that you use.
Come on.
Vinegar is now double stocked in my house.
Yes.
And we feel it's important because, you know, we own the place and we feel like we would do a better job than anyone we were to hire. So this guy that owns 40 places, he's hiring maids to clean, I guess, or someone.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think the quality was when people would go in and clean? I mean, are they doing a good job? Are they...
There's a standard. I don't know how to describe that standard, but what I can tell you is the way he works, you get paid per hour for your cleaning, and is a cap on how many hours you're going to clean. I think it's 2 hours. Well, and then he tries to, and this is an interesting attempt, if you do an especially good job, there's a bonus, 10 euros or something, or €5 bonus, I don't know. What's interesting is mostly on an average day, he doesn't pay that bonus out, only every now and then. Mm-hmm. So what he's trying to do is sort of create the possibility that when you're cleaning, you'll think, I could do an extra job because this, yeah. So I don't know if this is the wisest system, but that is the system at the moment. But yeah, this whole standard of cleaning, you know, the problem is that there are so many places. I think in the old days, it was easier to check. Or you would get that review at the end, so you can base it on that.
Right.
But the problem, especially from a cleaner's point of view, is that you only get paid for a set amount of hours. And some places, even in Amsterdam, could be 2 floors, could even be 3 floors. And there you are with your same set price for a studio apartment, cleaning a 3-floor place. Now,
or it could be extra dirty. A place that's really that dirty.
Yeah.
Now, there are exceptions, and there are, of course, this is where it becomes the responsibility of a cleaner, perhaps, to speak up and say, look, here's the case I'm talking about. It has 3 floors, or there was a party. And in that sense, you know, the person in charge should be reasonable. How could they not? The problem is a lot of cleaners are not, although Airbnb has a mixed bag, but still, we know that people who clean apartments, present company excluded, are not necessarily highly educated or in any position of power to feel like they can speak up.
They can say something.
They feel very replaceable.
Right.
They don't feel empowered, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So maybe I'm not going to speak up that this place isn't, that I'm not getting paid enough to spend the hours that I'm here. And
there isn't the incentive, like, because we own the place, we have the incentive to clean every corner and all that.
Because we're getting the review.
You know, if you're getting paid by the hour.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the other interesting thing is people that manage these large amounts of inventory is that, I mean, like, he's got 40 rooms.
Laundry is a problem.
If you were to stack that up one on top of each other, that's a hotel. I mean, he's running,
huge.
And so it's interesting, and to hear you talk about how he's like, he just rents a desk in an office somewhere, and he's kind of like, he doesn't really have employees. It's all kind of like ad hoc. It's just so interesting. Imagine trying to run a hotel like that, you know? I mean,
and it's the conversations start to sound like hotels as well. I mean, look, there's always a possibility he could hear this, and I don't think there's any big secret. I think he has plenty to be proud of. But even, let's see if I can do this without being specific. There is a theater company, one of the major theater companies of this country. It's not theater, I'm changing it on purpose. They now exclusively book rooms for their talent through him. So you used to probably make a deal with a hotel, but now you make a deal with this individual who within his no Rolodexes anymore, but has 40, which, as you say, basically a hotel is just spread around the city. And now there are entire institutions that are choosing that. Wow. And the paperwork matches up, it all works. So that was another conversation we recently had where I realized you're not that far from being a hotel.
Right. So I think that is interesting because when you look at, like, if you go on Airbnb.com, it's really beautiful how they kind of redid their site. They have these, like, images and it's, like, homey and all that. But really, I wonder which way Airbnb is going to go. Is it going to be more stay the homey way, or is it going to be more where more of their inventory is, like, run
by those management companies?
Yeah.
I think I know.
Okay.
It's always a risk to think that but I think that anytime something goes mass, it loses. I mean, it loses. You'll do fine, Airbnb.
Yeah, you're good.
But you lose whatever it was that was unique and very, special.
Yeah.
And you become something else.
Yeah.
But masses of people often do change things.
And I guess really at the end of the day, all Airbnb cares about,
money.
Almost at the goal line, and that's their IPO.
Yeah.
So once they go public, everyone gets cashed out, and then it's like the problem's just now a company problem. And,
the founders got their money.
Every time I stay somewhere with Airbnb, I always fill out that, every single question on the questionnaire, and there's always that thing, anything you'd like to say to us, say, listen, I'll say one of two things. This person embodies everything that you used to love and that many people still want in a place to stay. Yeah. It was warm, it was welcoming, or all right, this place, as good as it was and as clean as it was, it doesn't have any of the soul, any of the heart, any of the things that you used to be very, so I always point out when someone deserves compliments and deserves recognition from the company in whatever form, but like watch this person because they're good.
Yeah.
And then
in some intern
places I don't like, I don't say so much about them.
Yeah.
And some intern or seasons is like, whatever, delete.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it's at. Here I am writing a piece of poetry.
Yeah.
Some intern who can't afford their rent in San Francisco because Airbnb's taking over. Yeah.
But, again, I don't know. We aren't really saying, like, what's wrong or right. It's more about
just what's happening.
Our personal preference. It's just a style. And I know after we stayed at our place in South America, where it was one of these management companies, it felt very soulless. Ever since then, I've always skipped over those bookings because I can see this host has 78 bookings, 78 apartments. So we now purposely pick the single ones because
very good. Yeah,
because I feel like it's going to be when I send a message in, it's going to go to the actual owner. I'm not just talking to an assistant, and and so it's really that's I guess how it's going to work. If people choose the smaller people, then that's cool. But if they choose to just go to like the management companies, then that's how it's going to work. That's the market.
And I also think that now there's going to be an opening. Maybe I'm overestimating, but there's going to be an opening for some service that comes along and recaptures or maybe even improves on whatever it was that was so interesting about Airbnb in the beginning. If you can bottle that again, at least for a little while, I would go with you. I would be like, all right, Airbnb, you're doing so great. I'm going to move on.
Yeah, that does happen.
And I'm looking for that, actually.
Mm.
When I found Home Away a while ago, and I was like, oh, maybe this is the new. No, it's been around.
Yeah, it's been there. Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what it is, but I'll know it when I see it. But there's going to be room here because once you become that big, one of the other side effects is that, well, then someone else is going to come along. Could
possibly.
Along.
Yep.
But it is a hell of a big empire and such a familiar name. And we have dealt with it for many years, but for a lot of people it's new.
They've never heard of it. Yeah. They just started doing television advertising. Like, that's new this year.
Right. Television advertising.
I mean, you're right. Yeah. You're like, what? TV? Who watches TV? A lot of people do. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear the perspective here.
Yeah.
Compared to our little rural country world.
Yeah, so I think to kind of wrap this up, I think that is the interesting thing to take away is that just because you have a room or a house doesn't mean anyone's going to rent the place.
No.
And just it's difference between your place in Portugal, that sounds awesome, but no one wants to really go there. And then you have a place in Amsterdam where, you have to push people away because it's so popular.
Yeah, it's a whole different...
Just so many
Two
different problems to have.
Yeah, and of course, Amsterdam has so many assumptions,
yeah.
preconceived ideas about it, and my house in Portugal has no notions about it. People often misunderstand. They think, even though there's a map and there's clear information, they think it must be near Lisbon because it's in the Lisbon district, and they think they're just going to walk over from the center of town. And I'm like, no, it's an hour.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's when they cancel or they stop answering my messages. Yeah. So people preconceived ideas will go a long way in this whole game, and I don't know where you guys fit in with that. Although it seems like the kind of people doing the kind of tourism in your area are especially warm and friendly.
Well,
Nature-y.
Nature-y.
As we've talked about that, I think we've done well. Some of it's because we've done a good job, but I think a lot of it is just because we live in a place that people want to come to. People want to come hiking. There's
They want
a
to
river,
go on the river.
and so we just added another piece of inventory to it, and so that's good. And so I think for anyone who's hearing this, who's either interested in starting this, that's where you have to come from. Like, you have to think, does anyone want to come to where I'm thinking of starting this thing? Like,
What
if
kind
you're
of
in
people?
a suburb, it's interesting. I see people trying to rent their rooms.
A lot of people in the suburbs.
And there isn't a suburb of America, and I'm just like, why would anyone want to
But you know what? I will say this.
But
a lot of people do rent
Successful.
those rooms. Yeah.
If it's near, maybe
bus.
a business area,
or like a big hospital.
Yeah,
or
I don't
know. A college or
Yeah.
something. Like,
Yeah.
I see that. But
There's got to be...
I've also
reason.
seen people in the UK who are like, I'm not near a big city. I'm out in the country, and I'm getting so many bookings. And it's like, well, people just want to get out of the city, and they want a quaint little place to stay, and
Yeah.
you're
that.
affordable, and so it's interesting because it's almost like Airbnb is like making little places to stay. Like, we're just a little tiny nothing, and outside of whatever, and they're like, people want to come, they want to walk the nature trails and stuff. It's like
True. But that whole thing of notions of when you're coming somewhere, what you expect. But when we start to talk about a place as not being the home of people or anything more than, yes, drugs and alcohol, which are beautiful in their time and in their moment, but there's a lot more going on here.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is kind of a bummer, and we do kind of suffer the side effects of that.
Well, I mean, it's definitely why we've been coming back here year after year.
The drugs have
our
been-
third
No,
year.
the opposite of that.
Because we come here
we
because
have to explain that to people. When we're
Yeah.
like, we're going to Amsterdam, they're like, whoa, and you're like, for none of the things you're thinking of.
Yeah,
Like,
but
we like to
thanks
walk
anyway.
around the canals.
because
like,
we love to.
we love the city. You
Yeah.
know?
And I'm pleased that those are options as well, that you can go get your drugs.
You wanna do
like,
that.
I don't want to live in a city where all these things are taboo and banned. I
Right.
was just hoping that we realize that it's
There's more than that.
yeah, there's more dimensions to
Yes,
this.
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for talking to us today, Mark.
My great pleasure to have you back in this town, in
Yeah.
my home.
Yay.
One of my first guests in my home.
Yay.
And I'm really thrilled. The next time I hope you'll stay here, and I'll just go.
And we'll rent it on Airbnb from you.
I'll go stay right.
And plus, if anyone's hearing this that rents in a place on Airbnb who is outside of America, well, we'd love to hear you on our blog. Just because I'm always interested what that experience is outside of America.
Yeah.
good or bad. So.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See you. Bye.